Greetings and welcome. My name is Jake Rayson. I'm a forest gardener and a forest garden designer, and welcome to the regular Wednesday 10 o'clock, whatever time it is here in Wales, Greenwich Mean Time, British summertime, every single Wednesday for the past, since March, since the first lockdown, I've been doing a live stream, and this is just half an hour, and today I'm talking about design. I sent out a mailing list. This is a kind of job that I'm doing for a friend, someone I know, and it's looking at their land. But I just wanted to use this opportunity to be able to talk about the design process. Now, I only went up to see the site. It's just the early stages, having a quick look at the site, having a quick chat. So I haven't done vast amounts of work on it, but that is absolutely fine, because what I wanted to do was just to go through the questions that I approach a design project with, and it's kind of interesting. These are very specific to the site, but the questions are very general. So rather like with a forest garden, the principles are quite generic. The actual application is very specific. That it depends upon where you are, what you want, how much time, energy, money you've got, all these range of different factors. So this is really, just to say, these are the kind of questions that I start off with. So first of all, the first thing that I do, as much because I am working remotely an awful lot, I will look on a satellite. And that satellite is great, really for a larger garden, but it is only the start. What's good about it is that it gives you an overview. What's bad about it is it's not particularly accurate, and also it's a snapshot, and it's also very flat. You can't see the contours of the land. So whenever you're designing a forest garden, my next stage, if I'm doing a remote garden design, I'll look at the satellite first of all, and then I would look at videos. Videos are invaluable if you're ever working remotely, so that you actually get a much better sense of the place. And photographs. Photograph everything. It's quite funny that the job, whatever job it is, you don't think there's much detail in the... It looks like a big open field, but then you start to notice things and the position of things and certain trees and certain features, and you realise that it's actually all an awful lot going on. So you really need to take photographs of all the things, even the really kind of boring things. You go, it's just doesn't look particularly amazing. That's not the point. The point is to capture the information and pass that information on, and to be able to think about it when you're not actually on the site. Second thing, so you've got the satellite photograph, video and video and photographs. But the other thing is, particularly if you're doing your own garden, you really need to visit. You really need to be in the space. You actually need to see the space. I'm doing a job at the moment, and it's just a totally different job. It's a patio, the front of a house. It's a holiday home, second home, and it's a very totally different job. But the key thing is, I need to be there. I marked it up yesterday with the paint to get where the raised beds are going to be and where all the seating area is. But you actually need to see it and work it out and see what it would feel like, and see if it sounds strange, but you need to know in real life what it feels like when you're walking around. And if you put a tree there, or if you put a raised bed there, what would it feel like? How would it change? Where would it fill up? So these are all kind of very general things. So I just want to have a look at the land. Yes, it's going to do... Oh, there it is. Okay. So first thing is, when you're looking at a satellite photograph, it is super interesting. You get a sense of what else is going on the landscape, and where other things are, and what other things, what other things are going on. What's the habitat? What's the situation? How is your property situated in the landscape? And that can be like there's no real kind of distinction between the landscape in the natural landscape and the human built environment. It's the same thing. It's whether you're next to a railway line, or whether you're next to, there's the road or farmland. It's that relationship that's kind of really interesting and also really important, because it determines it's what your what your space is like. So it's getting to know that. First thing then is that this is on Google Maps, and if I zoom in, what you will see, zoom, oh, it's terribly slow. I do need, if there are any rich benefactors out there, any multimillionaires watching this and thinking that forest gardening is the way to go, please buy me a big fat brand new shiny laptop, and then I can zoom in quickly. So this is the house here. I'll just very kind of quickly go over it. This is the house here. There's a garden around the house, a kind of vegetable garden, and turning into a forest garden. And this is the area that the client would like to have developed. And it's a bit blurry and it's not particularly good. And then I went on to Bing Maps. Whoa! And if I just go into the aerial view on Bing Maps, it's incredible the difference in the quality. So do try out different maps. You see, just much more up to date, much more detailed. And so I've been using this one. So I'll get rid of Google Maps. And the first thing, the kind of first questions that you've got, actually, it's to do with how the people are relating to the land. And I'm not saying this in a kind of hippie sort of way. It's a real practical thing, that you need to know what people want to do, and how what their resources are, how much time they have, and this is stuff that you can apply for yourself as well. How much knowledge you have, and trying to figure out the kind of best use for the space. Now, with a forest garden, what is absolutely fantastic about forest garden is that it does more than one thing. A forest garden is much more about it's a productive space that you are primarily you're growing edible crops, but it's also you're growing edible crops with nature. So it's a wildlife garden, and it's the same principles as a wildlife garden. You're creating habitat. You're planting native plants where possible. You're not using as few inputs as possible, external inputs, as in human-made external inputs like fertilizers or trees, or you're trying to reduce the amount of stuff you're bringing in. So it's a self-sustaining edible ecosystem. And the third thing about a forest garden is that it can be ornamental. You don't have to chuck the ornamental baby out with the bathwater. You can have everything. So this is the key thing to get across. I think people get really hooked up in putting gardens into boxes. So they'll say, this is a particular type of garden. Well, I can't have, you can't have a native garden and it be ornamental. Absolute rubbish. You totally can. If you look at well-designed gardens, they are well-designed regardless of the plants. And this is a really odd thing to say. It might sound a bit odd. But coming back to the principles of a design, what you're actually doing with a design is thinking about the function. And this goes back to the relationship between the people and the land. What are you doing with the land? What's your vision? What's your idea? What are you trying to achieve? So just using this job as an example, this project. You have there's a rough track comes in. I'll just try and wiggle around a bit. The rough track comes in to the house. There's a couple of outbuildings here, kind of social space as well, and storage. And there is a garden around the north of the house, and this is where there's some the client, I shall refer to them as the client, has planted some currant bushes, and there's a couple of large 3 mm106 kind of 4 meter high, 4 meter wide apple trees. So that space there where you can just see the mulch there in the center. I'm saying that's the best place for your annual vegetables and your perennial vegetables that need more light. That's actually going to be over here, you're shaded by the house. You're behind the house, so that will cast quite a lot of shade. But it's still usable. That lawn space there. But this strip in between, there's currant bushes here. I don't know if you can see that. Currant bushes there, and then that strip there is where I would put annual vegetables, and then there's apple trees at the back. So that's kind of like a foresty garden sort of area. Then they have also planted some apple trees in here, so it's all kind of fenced off, and there is tree guards around the apple trees. It's an orchard, so that's great. That's fine. So the space that they want to develop is this space here. Yeah, so that's good. Now the idea that what you want to get at is how does the client want to use that space, and it's firstly is to kind of create it into a forest garden, so that's very much a part of it, and secondly is to have a crop there. Now there's apples down here, and there's soft fruit here, and more apples and perennial vegetables here close to the house. And I think this is really, really good way of doing it. Really, really good way of working it. I wish I'd taken heed of my own advice. Put your herb garden and your perennial vegetables closer to the house. The perennial vegetables that you use all the time, so your leafy vegetables, your spinach stuff, put them close to the house. Have them close to the house so you can go out and you can harvest them and you can bring them straight into the kitchen. Plus perennial vegetables need more weeding than stuff that you're not kind of using so much. So like fruit trees, you don't have to weed fruit trees every day, every week. But whereas perennial vegetables, some of them they'll need a bit more care and attention. So put them closer to the house. So this space here, then, this field here is it's kind of interesting. It's really, really interesting. It's you need to. I wish I'd taken some photographs actually. It faces the slope. It slopes from the west to the east. And then you can see there's this patch of rush here, the dark green stuff. So there's a lot of water here, and it's heavy clay, and it's kind of interesting. It's like my main question really is, where does the water come from, and where does the water go? This is kind of interesting because it looks like it will go straight to the house. But there is over here, I noticed there's quite a fair sized stream at the back of this hedge here. So I'm wondering if it's kind of diverted round, or where does it go? Where is the water? And what you want to do is to work with what you've got. Sure, make amendments, but you want to when you're creating a garden, you can bulldoze everything and put stuff in and just kind of start from blank slate, but it's a load of work and a load of energy into it. Much better to work with what you have, and this is perfect for developing the not a water garden, a series of ponds. And this is what the client said: having a series of ponds running down the hill, and then having a path that goes around. And this is the kind of top of the hill of the property, and has a view across to is it the Black Mountains, Brecon Beacons? Oh, I don't know. It has a view across to some mountains, and that then becomes a focal point. So you can start to say, okay, so there's a damp bit in the middle. So what we're going to be doing is is to put some ponds in. It's heavy clay. So get to know your soil, get to know what you can do with it. Heavy clay is great for creating ponds that don't need a liner. So the ponds we've got here, we've got a kind of clay. It's a loam really, but with a lot of shale in it and shale bedrock. So it's not ideally suited for. I have to import clay if I want to get a clay-lined pond. I'm kind of interested in doing it just to see how it works and see if it does work. Because long term, you have to replace a pond liner every 10 years or so, and that really isn't sustainable. So I just want to, if you've got clay on site and you've got a damp patch on site, it's screaming out to be developed into a pond. And a wildlife pond is some of the best habitat that you can have. And what is perfect about this as well is that it can be a bog garden. So you have a range of different habitats. As gardeners, we are in a unique position of being able to create multiple habitats that are low maintenance, that are sustainable, but you wouldn't really kind of necessarily get them in nature. It's you can cram a lot of different habitats and encourage a lot of different wildlife in a very small space, and this is an absolute luxury as a gardener. There's a fantastic gardener, I heard a podcast the other day, and he's saying, my job is great because what I do is create habitat every day, and I think about creating habitat, creating edible crops, but creating habitat. So that is what really cries out. Is it's ponds, it's marshes. There's a water course-way running down here. There's a natural path. The top left, the left-hand side of the field here is the high point, and that's a viewpoint. So that's great, and then that catches the morning sun. And then the bottom here, less sun because of the angle. It's a fairly steep angle, not massively bad, but that catches the afternoon, the evening sun. So you want to keep those ways free. The wind. I'm guessing actually. I'd need to check for this, but would probably come from the southwest. Would come from this corner here, and that's kind of cool. So also look at the infrastructure that's in place already. So there are 2 hedges. There's a hedge along the north boundary here. It's double thickness and it's planted up mostly hawthorn. And I think there's, oh crikey, I can't remember, blackthorn. I think it's a range of different plants, but mostly hawthorn. And the same along this fence here, it's planted with hawthorn. Hawthorn's a really good, it's a very good hedging plant. You need to, like a lot of, but it is a tree. It does grow, it can grow up to like 12 meters tall. So if you leave it, it will get leggy, and then you'll get gaps underneath, and it will form a tree and cast quite a bit of shade. Not necessarily a bad thing per se, because you're creating a damp, shady conditions down this side. So your kind of alternatives are, I wouldn't bother starting again with it. What I would actually do is, if you have people who can, if you can either lay the hedge if you want to grow anything here, or let it go, or just cut it back so to encourage it to bush out, and then say we're going to have a 10-meter high hedge. It's on the southern border, but the land does get move up. So you're actually treating, and because there isn't really any need for like a perennial vegetable, it's not. This is like an area where you're growing a different crop. You've got the perennial vegetables next to your house. It's not such a big deal like having the sun. So then you kind of thinking, okay, what crops can you grow? And the client was talking about growing different nuts. Okay, I really wanted to show you taking a screen grab. So what I'll do, I won't actually do it because it's really slow. So this is how I start off. This is the kind of process of, this is a space. I'll take a screenshot of the satellite photograph, in this case Bing Maps. And if you look at the bottom right hand corner, you'll see that there is a scale, and it's really important to capture that scale when you have the screenshot. I won't go through the process. If you look at my website, I've got a course. I have a forest garden course. If you look at my website, hold on a second, Alpha. If you look at my website, under the plan, it's how to make a plan, how to create the map of the land very slowly, and it's got the details in here. So will it load up? Yep, so how to create a CAD map, and it gives you this is how you create a CAD map, this is how you take a screenshot. So I have done all that already, and I'll just show you in CAD how it looks. So, it's okay, good. So this is a CAD map. Okay, and then I've got a width factor and a height factor. I've scaled it down, and the beauty of this is that I can very quickly get an idea about which trees will fit on here, just in terms of the size of the trees. So if you see down here, I'll zoom in. This is just a very quick. This is a 4 meter. Oh dear. This is a 4 meter circle. So I can place it down. I'll zoom in, and I'll say, okay, let's make it a 12 meter tree. How many 12 meter trees can I get in that particular spot? Yeah, and then you can just very quickly, just very approximately put the trees into place, and you get an idea of the spacing. Now the key thing is the light, how much light you've got coming in. So you need enough light for the plant that you're putting in. And for this purposes, so I've imported my bitmap, my image, and basically all I'm using it for in a very basic way is to put circles on the map. That's the level, that's all you need to know. Really, that's the most critical thing for designing the garden. It's the infrastructure, it's the canopy layer. So this is the only bit that, you can get into more detail with CAD, and you can start getting into fancy paths and all the rest of it. But to be honest, I really wouldn't worry about it. What I would do is just to get, I probably can't see that. Can you see that? Oh, there we go. Yeah. So you can print out the map on A3, just the outlines, and then that gives you enough that you can draw on it in pencil. But it is that simple. Import the image, draw circles on it, and you get an idea of how many trees and how many shrubs you can fit in that space. That's the thing. The smaller the garden, I would still put a plan in. But you can actually, with a small garden, you can go out with a tape measure. You can get a tape measure, and then you can figure out how much space you actually have. You don't necessarily need to create a plan of the land. Whereas with a large area, this is ideal. Satellite, circles for trees. Nice and simple. So, trees. Which trees will go? Firstly, what crop do you want? So, the client here has got apples down here, apples and perennial vegetables, and soft fruit up here. Nut trees is what's crying out. So nut trees, what nut trees will grow? And this is where you have your reference books. So you got your reference books. So always Creating a Forest Garden, Martin Crawford. Have a look at what the growing conditions are for each of the different plants, and then we have his other books, Trees for Gardens, Orchards and Permaculture, and it's just for reference to see what the different cultivars are, how they are suited to your conditions, and it's kind of, I just think it's kind of worth it. It's £26 for a book, and if you get the right cultivar, then you're spending £20-30 on a tree, and then in 10 years, 5 years time, or however long, it starts to bear fruit. You get the right tree, then that's just saved you loads of the time. You plant the wrong tree, it doesn't grow. You plant the wrong tree, you don't get a harvest from it. So it's a good investment. I kind of would recommend it. Consider it, or pay someone to actually choose them for you. Pay somebody like me to get them for you. And then his other book is How to Grow Your Own Nuts. Again, a bit more specialised. But it's still useful. So, which species here? Well, have a look, see what the different nut trees are, what you fancy growing, but whether they will be suited to these conditions. So this is West Wales. It's heavy clay. There's quite a lot of water. Do check the soil as well, because the soil will change across the site. That it's not ordinary. You go, oh, that'll necessarily be heavy clay across the whole site. No, have a look and see what the soil is. Get a spade, dig it up, and see if the soil is different in different places. Okay, because it can vary dramatically. Even in a small garden, you can get a dramatic variation between soil types in a very small space. So you might be able to grow a tree that wouldn't in one place, but not in another place in the garden. Now, sweet chestnuts don't like heavy clay. That's the kind of one soil they don't like. They're like a neutral to an acid soil. They kind of prefer free draining and full sun. We've actually done really well. The sweet chestnuts here have done fantastically well. They've grown brilliantly, but we're on a bit of a slope, and the water doesn't hang around, and we've got quite a light, relatively light soil with a bit of quite a lot of aggregate in it as well. So it's kind of good here. So there might be a space for them, but I would check the soil. I'd say from what the client said, I'd say no, don't, probably not sweet chestnut. But what will grow lovely would be hazel, and getting a good hazel crop would be fantastic. And and then there's a range of different plants. Hold on, where's my plant list gone? Oh yeah, I didn't put all the plants down. So Cornus. Oh yeah. So hazels would be great. So look at hazels, and there's a whole load of different cultivars and cob nuts, all different types. Pecans and heart nuts, probably don't know. Not sure about the soil. Maybe too wet. Don't know. Need more investigation. Oaks. There's the variety of different oak species, and there's oak acorns are edible. Our own native acorns from the sessile oak and the English oak. But there are more edible acorns, more edible oaks out there. I think generally tend to be Mediterranean. Don't know much about them. Kind of interesting area, but there might be something that will work here in this situation. So that'd be pretty bloody cool, actually, having a different oak species in. And Cornus, so what I'm thinking about, I mean, this actually starts to get really, really, really interesting. Cornus likes damp conditions, kind of similar conditions to Willow in my experience. I've had some Cornus in the drought a couple of years ago. It died back, but whereas here, if it's permanently wet, it would just absolutely love it. And then you go, wow, okay, so you've got different cultivars of there's the native Cornus is Cornus sericea. I don't know how you pronounce it. Sericea. Red dogwood, but there's also yellow cultivars, Cornus stolonifera, flavoromia, I can't remember. But there's yellow dogwood, red dogwood. They would do brilliantly. And then what you've got, this would look absolutely amazing. If you have Cornus as a windbreak, which you would have anyway, because you want to protect the upper part here. So you're probably looking at, because you've got the wind coming from the southwest. I'd actually consider putting in a range of windbreaks, not like one big windbreak along here and one big windbreak there. You'd actually have a range of them, so you're kind of staggering the windbreaks, so you're not just kind of blocking out all the light, because it's the balance between how much light you've got coming from the south and the west. You want to keep as much of that light as possible, so you have lower windbreaks but more of them staggered across the garden. Yeah. If you had that, then you could have, and you have the ponds, then what you could have, you have most amazing reflections. Wintertime would be absolutely stunning. You've got a line of Cornus and then reflected in the pond. What you do have to be careful of is leaf fall, because you kind of really don't want to have too much leaf fall in the pond. So sometimes around ponds, so think about using an evergreen windbreak or evergreen plants, because you don't want to have leaves dumping in. But still, it would look pretty cool. It would look quite amazing, like having a reflection of red and yellow, or you get different coloured. You get like a beautiful red and yellow Cornus. Can't remember the name of the cultivar. The dogwood. And then the other dogwoods that you have as well should generally like the same kind of conditions. Cornus cusa, which is a deciduous Cornus, beautiful, amazing flowers. A bit more shelter. I'd be kind of careful about that you give it some shelter. And Cornus capitata, Bentham's cornel, is an evergreen. So yeah, and then Cornus mass, which is smaller berries, I think is a bit more robust. I've got one here. And I've seen it being used as a hedging plant, so I'm presuming it kind of behaves rather like a dogwood. So yeah, lots of different choices. And then there's other ones as well, which just in terms of showiness are amazing. So Cornus, just like are beautiful plants. But the other one is Amelanchias. So there's Amelanchia lamarckii, Amelanchia lilavis, Amelanchia canadensis, and loads of different cultivars and different forms. Amelanchia alnifolia, obelisk, which is very upright, column light goes to about 3 meters, 4 meters, but it's like only about a meter wide. So there's a whole range of plants which would do really, really well there, and like those kind of conditions, those kind of damp conditions. So that's what my kind of inclination, the general kind of idea for different plants, and treating it. So the entrance is from down here, and there's it's up here. Sorry, entrance is up here, and then there's a path we go around. There's a path already mown, so and it works really well, and the path goes around, so it's like a circular walk. And it would be incredible. You could have like a circular walk snaking through a few ponds, and then so it's like a wildlife walk through the kind of pond marshy bit. Which should be brilliant. That'd be really, really good. And then there's a whole range of plants which like damp conditions, which like boggy conditions as well. So just off the top of my head, there's one which I mentioned, which was bog myrtle, for example. Loves damp conditions, aromatic, really, really beautiful kind of shrubby tree as well. Just really, really nice. So those are my kind of feelings, using the existing contours, creating a path going around through some lakes with Cornus Windbreaks, and then Hazel, and possibly other nuts, but Amelanchias and other Cornus as well, and treating it like with a space here at the end. That would be like lots of seating, because it's a kind of proper strolling sort of garden. It's kind of for wildlife and it's for crops, but it's also really, you want to get people out there because you want people to have a place to go. And the reason for this is that the more places the more places there are to sit down, and the more destinations there are in a garden, then the more attention you will pay the garden. So you will look after it more as well. And that's so I would have one at this end for the morning, and then a seating area at this end, depending upon where the light is. You've got to be kind of figure out where the light's coming from and where the sun is, but a kind of area down here. And also, if you can, level platforms, whether that's soil or hardcore or a wooden platform, but something level, and some shelter as well. And this can be really, that can be like a summer house, or that could be a willow structure. There's lots of different kind of things that you can do with it. Willow's another one which I would consider using, because there are some beautiful varieties of willow. Right, and then the other thing I really, really want to emphasise is there's two things. Firstly is when you're growing windbreak. So the first thing that you do is at the planning and the design stage, which is what I'm kind of talking about now. And the second thing is when you're growing, you put the canopy plants in, but you put the windbreaks in. Almost you want to put the windbreaks in before you put the canopy in. And windbreaks will include dead hedges. I wish I put dead hedges more here. I put dead hedges in first behind a windbreak. And then the windbreak will grow up, and the dead hedge will gradually, over the years, will decompose, and you're left with the proper windbreak hedge. But really, really, particularly if you're in an exposed position, I totally recommend putting a load of dead hedges in. What I would recommend doing as well is, if you have got the land, you have got the space, is to get material for your dead hedges. So I've just got a job lot actually of Bowles hybrid, which is a willow. It's Salix crossed with a Viminalis species, so quite a restricted root. Grows about 6 meters, 1.5 meters diameter, so quite a small tree. Very fast growing, grows about 10 feet apparently in 1 year. Once it gets going, so ideal. It's not, you don't really use it for weaving, but you can use it. It's ideal for dead hedges. So if there is a space that you can double up, you can use it for coppicing and creating dead hedges and topping up dead hedges as well. So those are the kind of 3 plants. Now I've kind of gone over a bit. The other thing that I wanted to discuss. I'm still on. The other thing I wanted to discuss was where to find this information out. So you've got your books. So you have you're looking at your different books for your different plants, and you're getting an idea what work where. and you go, well, okay, and then there's plants for a future. Now, plants for future is brilliant. There is just so much information in here, but I find it quite, I generally get an idea of what I want to use, and then I'll look it up. Well, I won't look up, oh, hold on, height, width. You can do it, but I find it quite, not particularly easy. So what I have done is to create from the database, still waiting to get permission from this to share this from Plants for the Future, but it's a database of all the plants in here. It's a spreadsheet, sorry. So all the plants in here, 450 odd plants, and all those plants are put into a spreadsheet using the data from Plants for the Future. And then what this means is you can then, am I going to do this? Oh, it might work. It gives you all the different attributes for the plants. And you can then search for the plants by their soil type. So soil type here, for example, are you going to give me soil type? Is it going to give me moisture? Oh, is it? It's not. Sorry. Oh, you're working. So you say wet. You don't want moist. So, for example, you can search by different soil conditions, different soil types, and different moisture. So here, I would say you're looking for plants in the damp area. I want plants that will deal with moisture and wet. So you say, okay, let's search by moisture. So you select the whole lot. I won't actually do it because it will probably crash my machine. Sort range, data has header row, and moisture. Okay, I won't click on sort because it will take ages, and I don't want it to crash my machine. So this is a really, really invaluable resource to be able to quickly find out what size to sort plants by size and conditions, and whether evergreen or deciduous, and whether they fruit or what have you. So really, really good. I will hopefully be releasing this to the public, to the general forest garden public soon. As soon as I get word back from Plants for the Future, and that is really a good way of choosing which plants you use. So draw up a list of possible plants, and then you can, like I've done here, and then use the resources like Plants for the Future or this spreadsheet to choose those plants. Okay, and then once you've chosen the plants, then you say, oh, I want to get this plant. You can say it's a circle, it's a sweet chestnut, it's 12 meters. I know that sweet chestnut will grow here, and then you can just plant, sweet chestnuts along and put the circles on the plan. Yeah. So that's the idea. Write up a list of plants, check the conditions, then put the plants on the plan. So that's the most basic level. That's what you want to do. That's how you want to be using CAD. So nice and simple. Anyway, I've gone miles over. I hope that was useful. I'm just going to quickly check the chat. Okay, thanks for watching. See you again soon. Bye.